I think I'm finally ready to talk about my November reads. Like, what month am I in? I don't remember anymore. Let's talk about everything I read in November. Movember? November. Hello, book friends. It's Alyssa. Welcome back to the channel. Hello if you are new. I had no chapstick here at the desk, so I had lipstick, so enjoy the lipstick jump scare. It is the end of a month. Well, I guess it's the middle of the beginning of December. What does the middle of the beginning of mean? I don't know. It's early December. So let's talk about everything I read in November. We got 1 month to go, kids, and there's so much to be read. So let us just not babble on and let's jump into the Storygraph stats, and then I'll go through my bookly and we'll talk about everything I read. All right, here we go. We read 15 books in November, and that was 4,196 pages. It took about 10 days to finish a book. I think I am slowing down. My moods were reflective, informative, sad, emotional, dark, tense. It was nonfiction November. I did not read a lot of really heavy nonfiction, so that does not surprise me. My pace was either slow or medium. Nothing fast in all of November, which seems to fit for nonfiction, honestly. Most of the nonfiction books that I've ever read do not move super fast. They're not all slow, but they don't move super duper fast. So that makes sense. Anyway, page number, we're basically in the less than 300 to 500 range. Not a lot of big chunky chunks on this list. My split for nonfiction, fiction. I really thought I had more nonfiction on this list, but 47% is still really good, and 53% fiction. My top genres are literary, classics, memoir, feminism, short stories, and contemporary, with some autobiography as well. And my average star rating is 3.77. There were some busts in this. There were some great books. It's a little bit more all over the place this month, which was not happening in other months. So it's kind of nice to see a good spread. I actually really like a good spread. It makes me feel like I was trying a lot of new things and really like exploring in my reading. When they're all one thing or another, I feel like I've done something wrong. But anyway, so those are the stats. That's where we are. Let's jump into the bookly and see everything that I actually read. Let's jump in right here with the first book I'm going to talk about for this month, which is Emma by Jane Austen. I was a little late wrapping this up, and I do have an individual review for this that will be going up shortly or is already out. I don't know when I'm editing these things. Not my favorite Jane Austen, actually. I talk about it a little bit more in my review, but I think the character work is superb. But in general, I feel like she could have gone deeper. She could have done more. There was a lot more to play with in this story than just having great character work. And shockingly, I feel like she goes deeper in Mansfield, and I never thought that I would be the kind of person who says that. So that was a little shocking. But anyway, I jumped back into the realm of the elderlings in November with Fool's Errand, which is the first in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the third of the 5, I think, series that make up Realm of the Elderling. I love this. We're back with Fitz and the Fool. We're back in like familiar scenery with familiar characters, and I'm really enjoying myself. Hob does break my heart again. She does like to like kill off characters or like make your characters go through things that are just so harsh. So she definitely did that again. But I really love this. I'm probably going to pick up book 2 in January, just because I have so much I want to finish in December, and I'd rather just start the year off with a Robin Hobb. So I'm making my way through this massive series, and I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. Guard Your Daughters by Diana Tutton was not the best book. I got this from Persephone. I found this other cover because putting a Persephone cover on here is really, you can't see it. It's not great for like YouTube graphics. But I didn't really end up enjoying this. I think the character work, again, the characters are really interesting. It's about this family post-war. They're relatively well off. The dad is a writer of crime fiction. The mother, something's not quite right with her. There are 5 daughters. One has moved out and gotten married. They are quite strange, in like a sweet way, but they're quite strange. They're very isolated. They're not allowed to socialize with other people. They're raised to have certain accomplishments, like one's a really great poetess and the other one plays the piano, and somebody else does this and somebody else does that. But they're very isolated, and they're isolated because of their mother. And I think what really killed this book for me was that the ending is very lackluster. I feel like Tutton is creating an incredibly sinister narrative, but never delivers that. And it ended up falling flat for me. I did enjoy reading it because it is very well written. It's just the story itself needed, I feel like if a modern writer had been writing it, it would have been more sinister and I would have enjoyed it more. It could have had more meat and more substance, and it just didn't exist, which was unfortunate. And it seems like at the end of the Persephone book, there were these other reviews that were quite mixed. They included all these reviews from the time it was written and from today, talking about this novel. And really, it is like whiplash reading them. You either love it or you hate this book. And unfortunately, I'm sort of more on the hate bandwagon. I don't really hate it, but like I'm much more, I don't like it. Like I didn't like this book. It's unfortunate, especially because a Persephone book in the US is like $30. So that was really painful, but it wasn't my favorite thing. Dead Relatives by Lucy McKnight Hardy is a collection of horror short stories. And while I did kind of enjoy these, they were a little bit lackluster. Some of them were better than others. I have a hard time sometimes with short story collections because of that. If some knock it out of the park, some don't. I feel like, I don't know. It was all right. If you're just looking for a collection of short stories, horror short stories in particular, go to your library, take this out, enjoy it. Otherwise, I mean, I think you could pass. I read The Nanoquich, probably said that wrong, by Henry Bean with some friends of mine. This was from McNally. This is a strange book. It is told through diary entries by our main character, whose name is currently escaping me. Harold, I think is his name. Harold. I think it's Harold. But he's a very strange man. He's very obsessed with this other woman. I believe her name is Charlotte. I was expecting this obsession to go on for longer than it does. He obsesses over her, then he gets her. He takes her away from her husband. They have a love affair. A lot of things happen. Poor Charlotte gets the crap beat out of her in the second part of this novel by the plot. The plot beats her up quite a bit. I don't know if she really needed to have that dire of a plot, like a character arc, to give Harold some sort of redemption. But it was an interesting read. It was a particularly interesting read to read with friends. I don't know if I would recommend this to anybody, though. I don't know who would actually like it. I can't say I liked the book, but objectively, it was fine. Blue Sisters by Coco Melors. I definitely did not enjoy this book. This book was absolutely lackluster for me. I feel like the sisters weren't that interesting. We're following 4 sisters, one of whom has died from an accidental overdose because she has endometriosis and she's in a lot of pain. And we're like a year out from that. Hasn't been very long. And all the sisters are kind of grappling with their own addictions, poor coping mechanisms, their grief, etc., etc. It's all things I should eat up and love, but the way it is executed just doesn't work for me. Some of the language was just terrible in my opinion. Like the passages were just cheesy and overwritten and made me roll my eyes a lot. I felt like the sisters weren't very interesting. In general, Avery was kind of compelling. The sister who boxes, I think people really like. I didn't really care for her, and I feel like we can blame that on Headshot. I just don't care about stories about boxing now. Thanks for that. Yeah, this just fell so short for me. I did not enjoy it. And it's the kind of book that I didn't enjoy to the point where whenever I see anybody else who didn't enjoy it say so on the internet, I'm like, thank God, I feel vindicated, because I feel like this was supposed to be a darling and it just isn't. But anyway, this was a total bomb for me. Natural Magic, Emily Dickinson and the Dawn of Modern Science. Interesting nonfiction. It's going to be very niche. It's the cross section of Emily Dickinson and Charles Darwin, as you might imagine, and how their love of the natural sciences, of the like, you know, biology, the world, around them, flora, fauna, all of that, how those things connect these two seemingly disconnected people. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was interesting as like a very like small, slight look into the history of modern science. It doesn't really go too far deep into that, but it was enjoyable. If you are the kind of person that likes Darwin or Dickinson or both, this would be good for you, but it's going to be a very niche reader. I did enjoy it. Next is Rejection by Tony Tulathimute. I cannot say this guy's name, and it feels horrible because I absolutely adore this book. 5 stars, one of the best books I've read this year. A lot of us have been toting its praises, shouting out about how great it is. It's a collection of interconnected short stories about various forms of rejection in the modern age, from like love to other things. It is going to make you cringe. It's going to make you laugh. It's going to make you question some of your past dating history. If you're me, it's definitely going to do that. It's so beautifully executed. At the end, he breaks the fourth wall in the most wondrous way. Absolutely love this. It's so smartly written. It's so like of this time. I absolutely adored this book. Ooh, it was so good. I finally got to Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives by Siddharth Kara. This is a must read, another 5-star read. This is obviously about the Congo and the cobalt mines and the slave mining and the children that are working in these mines and the horrible conditions, and basically how anything you purchase today that has a rechargeable lithium battery in it is going to be touching these mines in some way because cobalt is in them. And there's really no other way of sourcing it. There's no actual ethical way to source it the way that the system is set up. And it leaves you just feeling absolutely dejected because how do you fix this? I don't know if you fix it. There's some other reading I want to do on top of this. I feel like I've talked about this a lot between here and the podcast and in my Substack, but I absolutely adore this book. I think this is a must read for everybody to really understand how there really is no ethical consumption under capitalism. And I don't know how we fix this. The author suggests education, which I think is a key component of that. But how do you break centuries of colonization and abuse to a nation, and not just a nation, a continent and their resources? So phenomenal book, must read. Please pick it up. The Reminiscences of a Student's Life by Jane Ellen Harrison. Jane Ellen Harrison was a classicist that Mary Baird, who if you've watched like any ancient civilization kind of documentary anywhere, you've probably seen her, calls her hero. She's a very interesting woman. She is a Victorian lady who went to whatever the ladies' school of Oxford was. And this is her little memoir. It's quite short. I wish it was longer. It's a little glimpse into her life. It's also crosses with Virginia Woolf because Virginia Woolf mentions her in A Room of One's Own. The JH that's crossing the quad is this JH. She's a phenomenal woman. There is a biography that I believe Mary Beard wrote about her that I would like to read because she is quite interesting. She has a lot of languages. She's rather outspoken. She's a woman ahead of her time. I don't know if she's quite a feminist. I feel like I may have read somewhere that she wasn't really like for women getting the vote, but she's definitely interesting. And I feel like I want to know more about her as a person. So this was like a nice little teaser. And I always love a McNally edition, truthfully. Reading Lolita and Tehran, a memoir in books by Azar Nafisi, is phenomenal. I've talked about this a couple times on some shorts and some other things. I've sung its praises quite a bit. This was just such a wonderful look at one woman's experience. She's a professor. She taught at the University of Tehran for years. It's a look at how her life changed when the Iranian Revolution started, when the Iran-Iraq war was going on, through all these major life events. You see how her life shifts and changes, but she harkens back to the books that she teaches and the Western literature that she loves and the things that these books can teach us about ourselves and the world and how to look at humanity. And I loved this. It was such a wonderful way of framing a memoir, and I liked the little bit of literary criticism we got mixed in as well. Phenomenal. I think that if you love books and you love history, why are you not reading this? I did a reread of A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Still love this. It's still a phenomenal essay. It's not exactly perfect, but I think for the most part it holds up for a modern reader. The basic premise is that for women to create and to hold the same space as men in the world, they need a room of their own and an independent income. They need to be able to financially support themselves. That's like the nutshell. And I think that that is something that will kind of always be true as long as there is patriarchy. It isn't just something for creatives, but this seems to specifically be about writers and artists, but mostly writers in general. There's another book in here that talks a lot more about the artist angle of this. But I love it. I think it's one of those essays that is a must read for the feminist canon. You can critique it, you can love it, you can do whatever you want, but I think it's something that you kind of need in your tool belt, in your little arsenal of feminist writing. I think it's an incredibly influential essay that has shaped a lot of people. And again, it's not perfect, but I love it. I think it's phenomenal. I get something out of it every time. So great reread. In the Garden of Spite by Camilla Bruce, I listened to on my drive to and from Boston. This is fun. It's about this female serial killer in the late 1800s, early 1900s, I think. She comes over from Norway. She has a sister in like Chicago. She kills a whole bunch of people. She may or may not be the first female serial killer, and the story is a bit, she takes some creative license to make it more interesting and compelling, but she doesn't stray too far from the facts, and she's very transparent about it in the author's note. So I just truly enjoyed this. I thought it was a good time. It's very entertaining. I think if you have a longer drive, if you have like 5 or 6 hours of driving, this is just a great audiobook to put on because she's just so murderous. I really truly enjoyed listening to this. Circling back to Virginia Woolf for a second, I have Art Monsters, Unruly Bodies and Feminist Art by Lauren Elkin. I've seen so many people praising this online, and the audiobook became available for borrowing on Libby, so I picked it up, and I really, really enjoyed this. There's a lot of artists I wasn't aware of. It opens with a discussion of Woolf's essay, Three Guineas. So I was immediately hooked by the Woolf reference. And we do cycle back to Virginia Woolf quite a bit throughout the narrative. And it's the kind of the same discussion about how do women claim a space in art? How did women take up space in art prior to? What were they allowed to do prior to like now? Like what were they allowed to do historically? I didn't know that like women couldn't paint anything but still lifes basically. So you weren't painting the naked figure for eons. It was quite unseemly for a woman to do that. So there was just a lot in this. There's some beautiful graphics. I did pick up the ebook as well, just so I could see all the images and the art, etc., that is mentioned in here. It definitely is kind of a thought-provoking book. I think if you're like big into art, you probably have a different kind of takeaway. I just found it very thought-provoking. I found it a really great intersection between art and literature. And yeah, I thought this was wonderful. I truly enjoy this. I think about things. It introduced me to artists and writers that maybe I didn't know about, or I did know about, but I hadn't really spent any time with, and now I want to spend time with them, or I'm kicking myself knowing that I haven't spent time with them. Anyway, loved this. I don't know if it's going to be for everybody because it might be a little bit pretentious in how it's written, but I didn't really care. I enjoyed it. And then finally, I read my first Joan Didion, and I feel like I made a mistake with where I started. I started with The Year of Magical Thinking, which is her book about her husband dying. And the year after that incident, you know, they were having dinner and he just keeled over and died. He had a heart attack. He had a widowmaker. At the same time, her daughter was hospitalized for really terrible pneumonia and was intubated. So Didion is dealing with quite a bit between the grief of losing somebody and the stress of potentially losing somebody. She does ultimately lose her daughter. I know that, but not in this book. But she does come damn close several times in this book. And it is a really raw, honest, moving portrayal of grief and moving through grief and trying to keep going. But I feel like maybe I should have started somewhere else because I feel like I don't know Joan well enough to know this about her, if that makes any sense. So I may need to do a reread of this after I've read some more Joan Didion. I do have this collection of her writing from the 1960s and 70s. So Run River, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, Play It As It Lays, A Book of Common Prayer, and the White Album. So if there's somewhere I should start in here, I know that like Run River, I think, is one of her first novels, so perhaps I should start there. But if I may need to work my way through this and then circle back to my year of magical thinking so that I can really feel Joan and her struggles more personally, because it is a very raw and personal novel or story book, whatever. And yeah, but I'm glad I read it. I'm glad that I have an idea of her voice now, because I didn't quite know if I would like her. I know this is more of a memoir-y kind of book and less of like not a fiction story. But I did enjoy her writing. I think one of the things I keep thinking about with this is that she says somewhere in here that she's not like this technically perfect writer, and she doesn't truly understand grammar and all of its intricacies. She just writes the way she thinks it should be and how it feels right. And I really liked that kind of sentiment. I wish I had the exact quote, but like it made me feel really good. I think anybody who feels like they struggle writing and they question their ability to write, and if they're even any good at any of this, to hear somebody like Joan Didion say like, oh yeah, I'm not perfect, but like I just write what sounds good to me, that kind of feels really like freeing, to just stop being so focused on like, is it perfect, is it technically right, like is that where a comma goes, etc., and just let the words exist and be what they need to be, creatively speaking, in the project that you're working on. I really enjoyed that. And maybe I can kind of see why Nathan sometimes talks about Didion as being one of the great influences for him and his writing. But yeah, anyway, so that is everything I read in November. We are off to a decent start in December. I haven't really finished all that much, but I finished one big book that has been hanging around for a while. So we'll finally have an update on that. So otherwise, I don't have a lot to talk about that I'm carrying over into December, because right at the beginning of December, I finished 2 books, and we'll talk about them later. Yeah, so that's that. I'm going to wrap this up so I can get it edited and get it out to you and blah, 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 blah. I'd love to know what you guys read this month. If you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts. As always, I'm going to be announcing my year with Edith Wharton soon. So if you'd like to do that, just read with me. Just keep your eyes peeled. I've got my reading list. I've got my supplemental reading list. I'm working on some graphics. I'm working on a little biography of Wharton. So I hope to have that out before the end of December to announce it. Yeah, I'll make a little area on Substack for it if you want to make sure you don't miss anything, whether it's my random thoughts on something or a video. I'll make sure to announce everything over on Substack as well. So go over, subscribe to my Substack. There's a link in the description. I'm trying to make like kind of like a one-stop shop, because I know I'm kind of everywhere. And then also, memberships is open. I'm also working on a video for members, paid Substack subscribers, patrons, etc., specifically on The Woman Destroyed, which was one of our book club picks. I think that was September, October. I'm also making my way through my reread of Stoner by John Williams so that I can do something similar. My thought is that I will make you guys sort of more robust, as much as I can make them reviews of the books that we pick for our book club. For any like paid contributors to the channel, you don't have to pay, just there are people that do, and I feel like I need to do something very kind and nice and extra. So there will be these extra videos that will be there in about a year. I will probably release them to general public, but for now they will just live there for you all to see. Is a year too long? If people do these things, maybe tell me, is a year too long? Should I do 6 months? I don't really know. But anyway, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want.